Hi everybody, Erica here with Fibers and Floss. Welcome back to episode 4 of Flosstubeversity. Today we're going to be discussing Evenweave fabric, what that is, whether or not that's the same as Aida, and what are some common uses for it. This is part of our fabric series that we're doing, so if you have questions about Aida or linen, please go back and watch those episodes. You'll find a lot of information there and we'll refer back to those. Because we covered so much information in the previous videos, this video will actually be rather short, which will be nice. So Evenweave, the big question is, what is Evenweave? Evenweave fabric is a fabric that has multiple different uses. It's commonly used for cross stitch, but it's also used for hardanger, as well as black work, drawn thread work, etc. Embroidery as well, if you like. Evenweave is any fabric that has an even number of threads evenly spaced out across the warp and the weft. So when you look at 1 square inch of your fabric, you may have 20 threads going across the top and 20 threads going down the side. The key here with anything Evenweave is that not only do you have 20 and 20, but they're also evenly spaced out between all of those threads. So the other thing with Evenweave is the material that it's made out of. Evenweave is always a blend of cotton and rayon, and it's almost a 50-50 blend. So Zweigart is one of the companies that we're all quite familiar with, and their brand of Evenweave is known as Lugana. And Lugana is 52% cotton and 48% rayon. Wiltschild, they make Jobelan fabric, which is a 51% cotton and a 49% rayon. And then there's a couple others that, we've heard of, or perhaps you haven't heard of, like the Tula fabric, which is always a 10 count, and that is a 60% rayon, so it's quite high rayon count, and 10% cotton. There's other ones too, but those are the most commonly known Evenweaves in the world of cross stitch. Evenweave, I'll insert some photos here for you because I find showing them on camera just isn't quite the same as seeing a nice close-up picture. So Evenweave, at first glance, it looks a lot like linen. You will see there are multiple threads. They're evenly, perfectly spaced out across horizontally as well as vertically. It looks a lot like linen, but you'll notice that those threads are also even. So with linen, we have some thick threads next to some thin threads, and overall it should work out on average to the same number of threads every inch. On Evenweave fabrics, you will have, each thread will be the exact same size, and it will be perfect every time you count out per inch how many threads that you have. When I think about Evenweave, for me, it definitely looks more like a commercially made product. When we look at linen, you can see, it is made from flax. It is woven, traditionally woven by hand. It looks quite rustic. Whereas when you look at Evenweave, it's very smooth and balanced, and it just looks more commercially processed to me than linen does. But that's my opinion. In terms of Evenweave, we're also going to be counting it very similar to linen. So we are counting over 2 threads. 1 floss or 2 flosses over 2 threads here, whereas with Aida we count the boxes and not the threads. So if you're unfamiliar with counting linen and counting threads, I'm not going to reiterate all of that here. You can go back to the linen video. I'll put a little link for you where we go over that more detail with some images as well, so it's pretty easy to understand it. So this brings up the big controversial question, is Evenweave the same as Adacloth? And, I don't know why this is such a confusing topic, to be honest. And when we do a deep dive, it's pretty clear the differences between the two. But when we look online, just kind of a superficial search on Google, you may get some resources saying they're the same and some resources saying that they're different. The long and short of it, the answer is no, they are different products. And I'll tell you why. So I hope too many people aren't irate at that answer, but let me evidence it to you and then you can make up your own mind. So the materials are different. With Adacloth, Aida is 100% natural fiber. It is a cotton. Evenweave is always a blend of cotton and rayon, and it's almost a 50-50% blend. That rayon does give quite a bit of difference in terms of the product that your finished product. So cotton, for example, Adacloth will absorb dye really, really well, and it also can shrink because it is a natural fiber. Then when we look over at Evenweave with that rayon in there does not absorb dye very well. So if you want something where you're getting a really nice mottled effect with like a hand dyed or over dyed fabric, you're going to want the natural fiber, the Aida or the linen. The Evenweave, a dyer can put both types of fabric in the same dye pot, and they're very different results. The natural fibers are beautifully mottled. They pick up the colors, they're more vibrant, but with that blend of 50% rayon, on average 50%, it just doesn't absorb the dye as well. But the benefit to the rayon is that that fabric isn't going to shrink either. So if you're someone who likes to wash your fabric when you're done stitching, going with an Evenweave, like a Lugana is very common, or Jobelan is a great option for you. So there is a difference between the materials, right? So we have either 100% natural fiber, cotton, versus a blend of cotton and rayon, 50%-ish approximately. The next thing is with respect to the actual weave itself. So when you look at Adacloth, you have clusters of threads. So you end up with about 4 clustered pieces of thread and then a space. And then it repeats 4 and then a space, and 4 and a space. And that goes horizontally, and it goes vertically as well. And those little spaces, every, what would be a 5th thread, is what's going to create your holes in Aida. And so in Aida, we count those holes as a block or a square. And so that is not what is called an even weave or an even, the warp and the weft are different there. You have a repeating cluster of threads, 4 threads, space. Yes, it's a repeating, but it is not evenly spaced. When we take those same 5 threads and we go to an even weave, they are all perfectly evenly spaced out, and there's no spaces in between. It just continues for the entire warp and weft of your fabric. So those are the 2 really big differences. Then the third one is the counts as well. So Adacloth, the count is different because we're counting squares and not threads. When we count squares, common counts for Adacloth are anywhere from 10 to 20 counts. But when we count Evenweave, it's counted the same as linen. So we're looking at counting threads instead, and common counts for Evenweave are 25 through to 40. So those are the big differences there between Aida and Evenweave. Really, at the end of the day, it comes down to there being a difference in the materials that are used with the blends, as well as the consistency with the warp and with the weft. Now moving into some of the pros. So a lot of people really do love a good Evenweave fabric. You know, when people want to make that jump towards, you know, stitching on something a bit more refined like linen, they can be a bit intimidated by, you know, we all talk about the stitching errors that we make on linen, right? Because of those thick and thin threads, it's so easy to miss a thin. And when you get in the rhythm of stitching, you know, you may have 3 thin threads, but it's spaced over the same of what you've done the last, you know, 42 threads. So you just kind of stitch those 3 together because it looks like it's the right length, but it actually isn't. So there's more room for error in linen, whereas with Evenweave, it's so beautifully spaced out, and it's quite clear, this is a thread here, this is the neighboring thread, this is the neighboring thread. There's no really thin threads hidden in there. So it's easy to count on, and it's a great gateway drug going from, you know, Adacloth to Lugana or Jobelan to a goal of linen, if that's what you'd like to do. Once you can count, or once you can stitch on an Evenweave, you can totally stitch on anything. It's just learning that transition of counting from, you know, being used to counting on very clearly outlined squares, boxes, to counting threads and getting in the rhythm of counting, you know, 2 threads at a time. So it's easier to count than linen. It does have a smooth, refined finish, more so than Adacloth. So when you're looking at it in the background of your stitching, you're not getting that defined grid pattern. It does blend your stitches the fabric that is not stitched on does blend into the background, similar to what you're going to see with linen, although it's just not quite as refined. And then people say that, you know, the threads themselves are very nice and smooth, easy for their floss to kind of glide through. Evenweave is also very readily available. You can buy it at any LNS, you can buy it online easily, and some of the big box stores even carry it as well. The nice thing is there are a lot of hand dyers that are dyeing Evenweaves as well, so you can get some really beautiful color options out there. The cons, there's not a lot of cons to using Evenweave. The con would be in comparison to Aida, it is a little bit harder to count because again, there's that transition of counting the clear boxes to counting threads 2 over 2. But like I said, it's also a bit of a pro because it's less opportunity for error than counting in linen. The other con is that some people feel it has a bit more of a commercialized texture to it, and which, I mean, it's a con, but some people may really like that, having that perfect consistency with every single thread. But it is commonly listed as a con online. And I think it's more when you're, you know, doing a direct comparison between the Evenweave and the linen. With the linen, you do get a very refined look, but that refinedness comes with uneven threads, and then you need really good eyesight, and also there's that huge margin for error. And we've all done that. So it definitely is something that, you know, we come across. So this is actually the last video that I'm doing in the fabric series in terms of the actual linen, or the actual fabrics to look at. So we've done Aida, we've done linen, and then lastly was Evenweave. There are some other fabrics that people do stitch on, but really those are the 3 most popular types. So if you haven't checked out the other videos, please go back and watch them. Hopefully they are informative. And if not, if you've watched those already, move on to the playlist and see what else there is in Flosstubeversity. There's still lots to learn. Thanks so much. Bye for now.